Maybe we'll just kick off with you guys, a little summary about yourselves, organisation you're from and what you do there.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Rose Macdougall. I'm the National Marketing Manager at Lendlease. So I set the strategy for apartments in the development sector at Lendlease.
Hi, I'm Megan Skippen. I'm from Abadeen. I look after marketing, PR and brand strategy for our national portfolio. We currently have 23 projects active. We have 12 selling in Sydney, 3 in Victoria and 1 in Queensland.
Hi everyone, I'm Jess Kelley. I'm a Development Director with TOGA. Most of you are probably aware of TOGA, but for those of you who aren't, we're a family-owned, fully integrated private developer known for development and construction. Definitely recently in the mixed-use space with our Surrey Hills Village project, and I'll reference that project a little bit more on this panel discussion. Also, our hotels business. We own and operate over 80 hotels in Australia, Asia and Europe, and our property investment division. So as a development director, I work across our residential portfolio. I often joke that I'm a ringmaster in some sort of urban circus, lots of juggling, jumping through hoops, but, ultimately, hopefully, surprising and delighting our customers.
Awesome. Well, we're going to kick off with you, Rose. I think the One Sydney Harbour project is it the most expensive penthouse that's ever been sold in Australia? Is that right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So do you want to talk a bit about the project and when you've kind of gone after that very high end of the market? How do you kind of start with that when you're looking for someone to spend $140 million?
Yeah, absolutely. Really small, limited pool to pull from. But I might start with a bit of context on the actual project and precinct. So One Sydney Harbour sits within the Barangaroo precinct. Now, 15 years ago, Lendlease was appointed as the preferred developer to develop Barangaroo South. And at that stage, it was a deserted or a disused container shipyard, essentially. So, Lendlease developed and turned it into this vibrant, connected waterfront with commercial, residential, public realm, public art, Barangaroo ferry wharves. It was a whole new sort of ground, a whole new place that was being created. So sort of never been done before. And I think One Sydney Harbour was that final piece of that puzzle. One Sydney Harbour is 3 towers of 800 luxury apartments. We have the architect was Renzo Piano, who designed the Shard in London. We had the interiors by Daniel Goldberg, who also worked on the Shard in London. And then there was Chris Darling and Associates, who did One Hyde Park. So, this was some serious luxury. And, it was, in terms of pricing, we were going after massive price points. It was never been done before, not to this scale and not to this level of luxury. So, the stage 1 of Barangaroo South famously sold out within 3 hours on launch day. That was 168 apartments that, sold straight off the plan, which gave us this opportunity because the demand was just incredible. We had a couple of years between stage 1 and stage 2. And so we worked on building up that pent-up demand. There was no outward-facing marketing campaign. We purely relied on word of mouth and our database. And the marketing strategy essentially was to make it really exclusive. If you wanted an appointment in the display suite, you needed to put down a sizable deposit. You couldn't get in unless you had absolutely been qualified. So it was very exclusive and the demand was really high. So I guess getting to that penthouse buyer, in that first cohort of inquiry that we were working through, we had this buyer come through and he essentially wanted a 4-bedroom apartment to start with. And so the process that we went through with him was very personal. We built a lot of trust. I think that's been a big topic today around trusted developers. So, we built on that trust that Lendlease can deliver. And he essentially upgraded and upsold from a 4-bedroom to a full floor apartment, then to the penthouse, which at that stage was a 2-floor penthouse, and we then extended that to a 3-floor penthouse. Yeah, so that's essentially, he came in through that sort of exclusive first cohort of leads.
And how important do you think it is when you've got like a jewel in the crown, so to speak, with a major development like that? How important is it that kind of marketing has a seat at the table right at the start? And like at what stage do kind of the marketing team get involved with the development team?
Yeah. Oh, look, marketing has to be involved right at the very beginning. Getting all that research done to inform all those decisions around, what amenity the buyers will be interested in, basically, what their perceptions of the site are. We're going through that at the moment with project on 175 Liverpool Street. Marketing's heavily involved in the research around that and understanding who the buyer is and what their drivers are. So I think marketing up front in terms of research, it's very extremely important. And even when you go off market, all that marketing material and all those touch points, every time you send an email, post an appointment, when they come through the display suite, what is that user journey? I mean, all of those pieces are critical marketing informed touch points.
And for that kind of really high-end sort of product, whether it's the penthouse or other kind of like premium stuff, how much are you finding that was driven by overseas interest versus like local interest? And how do you kind of go about finding that buyer?
Yeah, so our experience was that the depth of market in Australia was sufficient. We had an incredible depth of market that I think surprised us all, to be honest. Less than 10% of our purchases at One Sydney Harbour were firm buyers. So, our learnings certainly were that the depth of market is there.
And in terms of their key criteria, so when that penthouse buyer came out, were they looking at other things? Did they have like a very clear set of specific things that they were looking for? Or was there kind of some flexibility in the process as you were kind of saying, oh, we could do this or we could do this? How set were they in their preference?
Yeah. So when that buyer came in, this specific penthouse buyer was looking for the best. He wanted the best product that there was on the market. So definitely a trophy home for him. And then I think the other part was that because we found him early on in the piece, we were able to personalize that penthouse with him. There were many, many hours with the interior designer working through the designs of that penthouse and customizing it. So personalization is huge.
And what kind of stuff, what kind of objections do they have? Obviously, I completely understand it must have been a trophy home for someone like that. What kind of things are the almost walkaways for them? Is it price or is it other, what is it?
Well, I think at this end of the market, price isn't really an issue. I think the real estate needs to be right. The finishes need to be right. But the challenge is that not many people are good at reading apartments or floor plans and understanding and visualizing what it looks like, and that trying to sort of dream and imagine what it'll feel like to live there. So it's marketing's job really to help them see what that lifestyle could be.
And then so if you were launching a new project, say you were launching the same project again, what kind of lessons, given that we're in a different kind of time in the market cycle and so forth, what learnings would you take and what would you do differently?
Well, yeah, I think it's a bit of a tough one really, but I think that the lessons are that the depth of market is definitely there. I think there's probably opportunity to do a lot more sort of personalization along the route, knowing that depth of market is there.
And were there any things that you tried that really didn't work for that project?
Not really.
You sold it, I guess. So.
Yeah, I think that the demand was there. So at this stage, everything was great. But I think the lessons that that we took over to One Circular Quay, that things that wouldn't have worked. Obviously, being a different time in market, it was a very exclusive campaign at One Sydney Harbour, and we took a very different approach at One Circular Quay, where we were a lot more outward with our marketing.
And then in terms of the Darling Point project you guys are on, what will you kind of take from that experience and what will you do differently?
Yeah, so I think, that tapping into that feeling that we want the buyer to feel and imagine and visualize. We've done exceptional display suites at One Sydney Harbour and One Circular Quay. So there've been incredible learnings out of those display suites that we are taking forward and using in our One Darling Point display suite.
Thank you. We're going to change gears and have some questions for you, Megan. So we're going to talk about the Mossman project. Do you want to just give us a bit of an overview on that one?
Yes, thank you, Mike. We've just received DA approval on our Burren Residences project in Mossman. It is an ultra-luxury project with views over Balmoral Beach. We were trying to work it out today, but if you walk down the road, down the stairs, it's about a 100-metre walk. But if you can get directly through the path, it's about 50 metres to the beach. We've just finished a project in Hampden Mossman, and we're looking at taking over the same team. So the project team is really important for developments of this calibre. We're looking at Matheson architects for the interiors and reform projects for the build. So we find that buyers generally like to work with the project team very heavily, just like Rose said, and at least they can go over to Hampden and they can look at the quality of the finishes and see it for themselves.
And I guess the same kind of question in terms of, when you're dealing, and Abadeen's kind of like a well-known experienced developer in that higher end of the market, how much kind of flexibility do you give to the consumer? And then how much is kind of too much?
Look, I think that buyers really like working with the interior designer. Builders are getting a lot of face time at the moment too. So that's very important, working through the finishes. Sometimes they like procuring finishes or materials from overseas. Can take anywhere between 6 to 12 months if you're looking at Germany or Italy. Matheson will be very heavily involved. We think that Matheson is setting a neutral palette so that the buyers can bespoke to their preferences.
It's a good example of something that was kind of like you do differently for those higher end buyers because you're going to provide them the flexibility and it's kind of a way to bring them in.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I know you've had a ton of experience working with the more like mass consumer, large scale projects. What's kind of the difference in terms of your approach from a go-to-market and marketing strategy for perhaps some of the projects you've worked in past lives relative to what you're doing now with Abadeen?
Yeah, it's probably more focused on discretion. We'll probably be looking at off-market for Burren to start with. We're working on the strategy at the moment, and I'm just not even sure if Justin wants to sell just yet. He might even hold on to one or two, but the location is so good and it's so rare that close to Balmoral that he's wondering whether he should sell now or he should hold off, and the true value comes at the end of the project when it's actually completed. Yeah. There's a lot of one-on-one appointments with Justin himself in a project like this, but we put the signboard up couple of weeks ago and he already started receiving calls as well. So a lot of people in the area have his number and they just call him directly.
That's a helpful kind of thing. And one of the things we often talk about with developers, and people have different perspectives on it, which is do buyers like the idea of buying the kind of suburb setting record? Or are they like, being concerned? Are they more proud that they're kind of like setting the benchmark and they're kind of got the best house in the suburb? Or do they kind of see it more like, I might have overpaid?
Yeah, absolutely. It's part of their story. They want the trophy home in Balmoral. Yeah, it's just like having the trophy home in Barangaroo. So, yeah, very interested in it.
And you kind of mentioned before, like obviously Justin, like just people just ringing him is kind of like helpful. So how much has kind of the Abadeen brand played into the overall marketing strategy for that project?
Yeah.
How much will it, sorry?
It's really important. You had the graph on earlier, right at the top you had location, but then you had trust and reputation not far down, and it's one of the things that you highlighted. We've recently completed Hampden and Mossman. We've also completed Coyo and Crow's Nest, and we've got 6 other sites that are currently under development and a lot of nearing completion as well. So we have Enzo Neutral Bay. Buyers around the area I've noticed, will go into these projects and then inquire about the sites that they're looking at buying. So very, very important.
Great. Thanks, Megan. Now we're going to change gears with Jess. We're going to talk a bit about Surrey Hills Village and a little bit about Macquarie Rise as well. And obviously this is a different type of project, but if you could just start with a bit of an overview of the development.
Sure. So we're definitely not talking about the dizzying heights of Barangaroo here, but Surrey Hills Village is now a completed project by TOGA, finished in 2024. I'm sure many of you have been there and experienced the F&B and the Eve Hotel. It really is fantastic. It's probably TOGA's first project that really sort of touched every facet of the business. So from development, construction, the hotels business, property investment, sales and marketing, our procurement and supply chain. So there's not many people in the TOGA business that haven't actually had something to do with the incredible achievement. It's completely mixed use. I think it's probably easier to describe what uses aren't at Surrey Hills Village, which is industrial, but it has everything else. It also has a heritage component to it.
Great. And so tell me, what's the difference between, I thought it was interesting with Rose saying, marketing's kind of plays a key role right from the start. Is there a difference between, marketing these higher end projects, whether it's kind of Macquarie Park or versus Surrey Hills, and what are the differences?
Well, I think the thing that is the same is know your customer. That's number one, and that can't be overlooked. And then having to, resonate to that customer and to that buyer in somewhere like Surrey Hills. Our purchasers there were really looking to buy into a transformative neighbourhood, and they were putting their faith in a developer that was bold enough to have that vision, but that also could execute to such a high quality. Our purchasers there were very invested in who the creative team were behind the homes and behind the precinct, what were the brands, what were the materials. So there's a real cultural cachet there of becoming a purchaser to live in Surrey Hills Village. Our purchasers, our customers, our experience at Macquarie Park, we've been out in Macquarie Park for over 14 years as a developer. It's a very strategic location for us. And our customers there, I would say, is possibly more around abundance. We're talking a much different price point. So what's the size? What's the storage? What's the amenity? What's the value?
Yeah, and tell me, how much kind of customization, because obviously that's a key driver of that value piece for the higher end buyers. Are buyers coming through, now or up until recently, expecting the same type of customization with the floor plan?
At Macquarie Rise, the answer is no. We invest very heavily up front, and knowing our customer, we need to know how they live, how they go to work, how they come home, how they interact with kids, if they're multi-generational households, what amenity they like, all those types of things. We work with our, sales team and up front. We really need to know and execute those decisions as best we can. There's no better way to waste money than trying to make change in these types of large-scale mixed-use developments, than trying to accommodate and make changes over and over again across a large number of apartments. So you do the research, put your money where, invest it in the right places in these developments that are high impact and are what the customer actually wants. And hopefully, if you've done your job right, you're not getting too many customers who are walking away from the display suite, unimpressed by the product that you're offering.
Because I guess at the end of the day, the main thing they want is the certainty of price, right? And in the same way that the higher end buy, the flexibility is what they're kind of looking for. Talk to us a bit about how you're going to take some of those learnings and bring them to the 5-dock project.
Again, there's really nothing getting the fundamentals right. We work across, all of us work across, many different markets. The fundamentals, the same, luxury taglines really get, clickbait, drive people to your websites, get people to your display suite. But trust is really the transaction. So TOGA will continue to build upon that as a long-time developer and builder. But, revealing some things, we are trying to look, and diversify what makes a home and what is attractive to a modern customer. What role does sustainability have in a luxury market? What role does wellness have? What about things like, loneliness and connectivity? And these are all important facets that are actually starting to filter into what luxury is. It's not just the finishes and fittings.
Thank you very much, Jess. And please join me in a round of applause for these legends sharing some insights. Appreciate it.